I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. So we've been reading primarily in the Gospels. Now we read the birth of Christ, the ministry of John the Baptist, the baptism of Christ, his temptations, and the initial disciples following him. We have had Andrew, Peter, Philip, Nathaniel, I believe John. All of them are now disciples of Christ. They have not been called as apostles, but they are followers of Christ, and they are traveling with him now. And they're on their way up to Galilee. Now we've also had at about the same time the collapse of the Nephite government. This is when the chief judge among the Nephites is murdered, and they divide into all manners of ites. All the tribes. Jacob, being the leader, being an antichrist, and leader of a league of tribes, flees into the north and all that. That's going on at the same time. So as Christ is journeying back up to Galilee, Jacob is fleeing north. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. But now, we pick this up again in John, and this time we will read in chapter 2. We're going to read the first 12 verses. And again, while I'm reading the Gospels, I will not be reading the chapter headings because I'm skipping around too much. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called, and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, They have no wine. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Jesus saith unto them, Fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he saith unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bare it. When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, Every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. After this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother, and his brethren, and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. So this is our first recorded miracle of Christ, turning water into wine. There are a few things we don't know. Taking the King James, we don't know what it means by the third day. Is this 3 days after they left the area where John the Baptist was? So they come up to Galilee, and 3 days later they're attending a feast? We don't know exactly. But when his mother comes and says, We need wine, and he says, What have I to do with thee? It's more, he's saying, look, my ministry is not yet started. I'm not supposed to be doing miracles yet. I'm not supposed to be out there, so what? But then she says, do what he says. He's okay. And I like that. These are the water pots that he used for purifying. This is what people would wash their hands and feet in before sitting down at the table. Christ tells them to fill it to the brim, and as soon as it's full, you serve it as wine. It's a great miracle. And the other thing there where he says, the governor of the feast said, most people bring out the good wine first, and then after everybody's somewhat drunk, you bring out the worst wine. That way, you don't know that it's worse because you're somewhat drunk, and so you can't tell the difference. But he said, this is the best wine. You've saved the best for last. This is a very unusual thing. Now there is, I do have to mention it, that a couple of the early church leaders in the 1850s, I believe Orson Hyde in particular, gave his speculation, his opinion, that this was the marriage of Jesus himself, which is why his mother was overseeing the servants. Now that is just speculation. We don't know. We don't know who was getting married here, but it is an interesting idea. I would also say that it seems that at this time, Joseph has died. The last mention we get of Joseph is when Christ is 12 years old. We do have that brief mention in Luke that he lived with his father all his days. But why is the mother coming to Christ and not to Joseph first? And if Joseph was alive, she would have gone to Joseph, and Joseph would have gone to Christ. That would have been the protocol. The fact that she goes to Christ first indicates that Christ is now the living patriarch of the family, that the father is dead. And I think he was rather recently dead, too. I don't think he died years ago. I think he died only maybe a year or two ago, which is why Luke says he lived with his father all his days. But let us look at the Joseph Smith translation. Every verse has a correction in it, but most of it, again, is minor grammatical update. So, it does clarify in verse 1, in the third day there was a marriage. In the Joseph Smith translation, on the third day of the week there was a marriage. And their week began with Sunday again. That was the first day of the week, because the Sabbath was Saturday, the last day of the week. So this is on a Tuesday. And then in verse 2 it says, and both Jesus was called and his disciples. We just removed the word both. We're changing the word saith to said again many times. In verse 4 we have, Jesus saith unto her, woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. That's the King James. Joseph Smith renders this. Jesus said unto her, woman, what wilt thou have of me to do for thee? That will I do, for mine hour is not yet come. So he's not rebuffing his mother as it appears in the King James. He's saying, yes, tell me what I can do for you, because I'm still here. I'm here to serve you. My hour is not come. I'm not on my ministry yet. So until my ministry starts, I will do whatever you ask me to. But the rest of it is all just minor grammatical changes. There is this last one here I do want to mention in verse 11. Says in the King James, this beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Joseph Smith has it this, and manifested forth his glory, and the faith of his disciples was strengthened in him. So it's not that they began to believe when they saw this miracle, but that the faith they already had in him was made stronger. We're going to leave that here. We will finish this chapter out in the next video, so I will see you there.